Hey guys, so today I am filming the second video in my makeup collection and overview series. Check down in the description box because I will have linked my entire makeup collection and storage for 2016 as well as my foundation collection and overview. So today's video is very exciting. I'm going to be sharing with you guys my palette collection. So in this video I'm going to be showing you all the palettes I own and giving you a little bit of information on the palettes. I don't want to go into too much detail and make this video too long, but I am starting a new series on my channel this year called Palette of the Month. So for every month I will choose a palette to use, and then at the end of the month I will post a video giving you guys a review of the palette, letting you know what looks I tried and giving you my overall thoughts. I am really enjoying that so far. I will have all of those videos linked down below in case you want more details on any of these palettes, and also feel free to request certain palettes to be featured next in my Palette of the Month series. So I'm really enjoying that, and that is when you will really get all the details on the palettes that I own. So please make sure you are subscribed so you will see those future videos. I would definitely make sure to have all of the palettes listed and linked in the description box as well. So let's just jump right in. So I've mentioned several times on my channel that I am way more of a single shadow person than a palette person, and for me that is because I consider palettes an investment, because most palettes are about $50, and even though they are a great value, that's a lot of money for me to put up for one product at one time. So I really like to think about palettes and how much I will use them. I do not buy palettes unless I think that I will use at least half of the shades. That's very important to me. So because of that, I have 5 different brands of custom made palettes. Now, even though custom made palettes are definitely not the best bang for your buck, they really tend to cost a lot more than buying a pre-made palette. For me, it's worth it because I collect the shadows over time and because I am picking out every single shade, so I know that I'm going to like the shades because I chose them. My first custom made palette is from Inglot. Inglot used to be so popular years and years ago, and I never hear anybody talk about it anymore, and I am guilty of that as well. So I have this little quint here of shadows. I have matte 352, pearl 423, pearl 434, matte 358, and matte 316. I put little stickers on the back with the shade numbers because they are impossible to get out of the palette once you put them in, so make sure you have them arranged the way that you like before you put them in this palette. So Inglot shadows are actually fantastic quality. They are only $6 each for this huge pan, so that is very impressive. And I love the matte and the pearlized formulas. I think that they are amazing. Great quality, very pigmented, very blendable. And Inglot is a brand that you can find in select stores around the nation. They don't have very many. Inglot also has counters in a few different Macy's, which I love. And you can also buy it online, the Inglot website, and also on the Beautylish website. And what's awesome is that on Beautylish they have the shadows swatched on several different skin tones, which I think is incredibly helpful. So when I purchased my Inglot shadows a billion years ago, the only option really was buying them on the Inglot website, and I had looked up so many swatches. I tried to do a lot of research, but when I got the shadows in person, every single color looked different than I thought it would be. So that was pretty disappointing for me, even though a lot of these colors are definitely still very beautiful. This shade especially, I'm just not really interested in gray shades like this. I was thinking it'd be more taupe, and this is definitely more of a charcoal, so I don't get a lot of use out of that shade in particular. This one as well is hoping to be a little more taupey, and it's basically just a light gray. So I was a little disappointed with these shades once I saw them in person. So if you can go to a Macy's or one of the Inglot stores and swatch them, I highly recommend it. But the quality is fantastic, and I definitely do need to pull this out and use it again. Next I have my custom made quad from Anastasia. So I wanted to have a little bit of versatility here. So I have 2 matte shades, 2 shimmery shades, 2 cool tones, and 2 warm tones. So the shades I have are Dusty Rose, Birkin, Truffle Glitter, and Pink Champagne. So Anastasia is one of my top 3 eyeshadow formulas. I do have a pre-made palette that I will show you guys in a little bit from her as well. I definitely love the quality of these shadows. I think that they are phenomenal. They have a lot of beautiful shades to choose from. These are $10 each if you buy 4 at a time, and if you're only buying them 1 at a time, they're $12 each. But the great thing is that when you do buy 4 of them, it drops down the price and you do get the little palette to put them in. So this is a cardboard palette, but they have recently upgraded to a plastic palette similar to the matte quads, and that is free with purchase from Sephora, Ulta, Macy's, and the Anastasia website. So I think that is awesome. Not only does it drop down the price, but they give you a palette so you don't have to go out and buy your own Z palette. So speaking of Z palettes, next I have a Sephora mini Z palette that was on sale for $10 on the Sephora website, so I highly recommend you go pick that up if you can. And here I have some discontinued Estee Lauder shadows. These are their cyber shadows, and these are just their regular powder shadows. These are such phenomenal quality. I do not understand why Estee Lauder would get rid of these, because the shadows that they have now are not the most amazing quality. They don't have the best pigmentation, and honestly they're really boring blah shades, so I don't know why they got rid of these. These are some really gorgeous shades and incredible formulas, so highly recommend that you guys check these out if you see them at a CCO. Next I have my beloved custom made MAC palette. MAC shadows are also part of my top 3 eyeshadow formula, and I do have an entire video of what's in my MAC palettes for eyeshadows and blushes. I'll have that video linked up here. I give you the finishes, swatches, everything, but really quickly I will run through all the shades for you guys. I am so in love with this palette because I do have it filled to completion, which is so exciting, and I have mine organized by warm tones, cool tones, and brights. I also have shimmery shades here and matte shades here, with the exception of this one highlight shade. So starting with the warm tone row, I have Woodwinked, Coppering, Sumptuous Olive, Soft Brown, and Brown Script. For my cool tone row, I have Yogurt, Satin Taupe, Cranberry, Ho, Deep Damson. For my brights row, I have Stars and Rockets, Shimmer Moss, Expensive Pink, Free to Be, and Fig 1. So MAC shadows in pan form used to be $10, but they recently dropped the price down to $6, which I think was such a smart idea on MAC's part, because there are a lot of brands out there that have these same quality shadows for an inexpensive price. So I'm really, really glad that MAC decided to do that. I highly recommend you guys check out MAC shadows. I think that they are quite impressive. Of course, within the line there are a few duds, but they have one of the largest shade selections for single shadows out of any brand that I've seen. Highly recommend MAC shadows. And then I have a large Leopard Z palette with my Makeup Geek shadows, and Makeup Geek is also one of my top 3 eyeshadow brands. Makeup Geek shadows retail for $5 each for their regular shadows, and then their foiled shadows are $10 each. So here I have them organized by neutrals, colorfuls, and special effects. I am hoping to get a couple more shades. Then I want to do an entire video on this palette giving you all of the shades with swatches. So hopefully that will be coming up very soon, but I really love the formula of all Makeup Geek shadows, both shimmer and matte. Highly recommend you guys check them out. They are phenomenal quality at a really affordable price. Moving on to my pre-made palettes. First I have 5 different palettes from Urban Decay. The first one I have is the Urban Decay Smoked palette. This palette was discontinued, but I think you can still find it in the sales section of the Urban Decay website. I was able to get this for like $20–25, which is a great price. So in this palette you get 10 shadows, and you did also get a 24/7 liner in Perversion. So this palette has some amazing smoky jewel tones here. You have a couple neutral shades, some really great mattes along here to help hone in this look. I wish there was more of a transition shade. Now this one can work, but it is a little bit light to blend out these colors, but I find it doable. I really do love the quality of the shadows in this palette. This is definitely one I neglect, but the quality is definitely there. Next I have the original Urban Decay Naked Basics palette, which I think is really beautiful. Naked 2 is definitely my favorite shade within this palette. These are really pigmented, a little bit more powdery than the rest of the Urban Decay Naked palettes, but this is definitely a good one that is great for traveling. Then I have the original Urban Decay Naked palette. My favorite shades in here would definitely be Naked and Buck. They are amazing warm tone, transition, and crease colors. I love the formula of the shadows in the original Urban Decay Naked palette. I think they're phenomenal. This is definitely not my favorite of the Naked palettes. I don't really use these shades down here or these over here. I mostly go with the shades in the middle. Then I have the Urban Decay Naked 2 palette, which is the more cool tone palette. My favorite shades in here would be YDK, which I love on the lid, and T's for the crease. Definitely really love the quality and the shade selection of this palette. And lastly, from Urban Decay, I have the Naked 3 palette, which is the more rosy toned palette. This is my favorite out of the three. I have done a palette of the month video, which will be linked down below. I really love the shades Limit and Nooner for transition and crease. Strange is a great brow bone highlight. Then for lid shades, I love Trick, Liar, and Mugshot. Next, I have two palettes from theBalm. First, I have the Balm Meet Matte Nude palette, which you guys know is one of my holy grails. You have 9 very large, all matte neutral tone shadows. This is definitely a great companion palette because you have a lot of crease colors in here and outer corner colors. I think the quality of these matte shadows are phenomenal. This is definitely my favorite pre-made palette. Next, I have theBalm's In the Balm of Your Hand palette, which is basically one of their greatest hits palettes. So up top here, you have the blushes in Hot Mama, Argyle, and Cabana Boy. You have the bronzer in Bahama Mama. You have the Mary Luminizer highlight, and then you have 4 shadows from different eyeshadow palettes. This one is from theBalm Jovi, the Nude Tude, the Shady Lady Special Edition palette, and the Shady Lady 2. And over here under a second flap, you have one of their cream blushes and one of their lipsticks. You guys will see a palette of the month video coming up on this very soon. Then I have 2 palettes from Too Faced. The first Too Faced palette I have is the Old School Naked Eye in the cardboard packaging. This comes with 9 shadows, so you have a daytime look, a classic look, and a fashion look. I think that this is a nice palette. It's definitely one that I tend to overlook because the shades aren't super exciting to me. This is definitely not a must-have in my collection. I think the Too Faced eyeshadow quality is pretty good. I do like their mattes and their shimmers. It definitely is not my favorite, but it isn't my least favorite either. Then I have the Too Faced Everything Nice Holiday palette. Up top you have 20 eyeshadows ranging from mattes to shimmers, from neutrals to colorful shades. On the bottom you have a peach and a pink blush. You have a contour powder and a highlighter. This cheek section is definitely my favorite part of the palette. Also comes with these pretty useless brushes, which I absolutely hate. This is another one of my neglected palettes. Honestly, I don't think this palette is worth the hype. Again, Too Faced shadow formulas are fine, but I'm not obsessed in love with them. So because of that, this is definitely a palette that I overlook. Next, I have 2 palettes from Sleek Makeup. The first Sleek palette I have is one of their iDivine palettes in Storm. I do have a review video on this palette, which I'll have linked down below. Some of my favorite shades would definitely be this Matte Tan Calm Before the Storm. I love these 2 shades here and these shades over here. This is definitely a great drugstore palette. I wish was sold in the US drugstores. And the second palette I have from Sleek is one of their iLust palettes in the shade The Gold Standard. And for the iLust palettes, you do have 2 cream shadows and 4 powder shadows. My favorite shade in this palette would definitely be this warm orangey brown. All the rest of my palettes are just Lone Rangers. I only have 1 of each brand. Next, I have the Lorac Pro 2 palette. So here's what that looks like. My favorite shades in this palette would absolutely be light brown and nectar. I think that they are such gorgeous shades. I also think rosé is beautiful. I've done a couple different looks with this palette. This palette is one of my least favorite because I cannot stand the formula of Lorac Pro shadows. They are just way too soft for me. I feel like they make a mess and they are overly blendable, so I definitely regret buying this palette. My next palette is a Kat Von D Interstellar. I have done a palette of the month video on this one, which will be linked down below. My favorite shade in this palette is definitely this light taupey color called Lunacy. Now, the formula of Kat Von D shadows, in my opinion, is very similar to Lorac Pro. I think that they are messy and they are overly blendable, so I definitely regret buying this palette as well. Next, I have the Anastasia Tamanna palette, and here's what the palette looks like inside. So all of Anastasia's palettes are limited edition. So the Omrezi, Maya Mia, and the Tamanna palette all came with 10 shades. Then when Anastasia came out with her artist palette and the Shadow Couture World Traveler, those came with 12 shadows. And then when they came out with the self-made palette, it had 14 shadows. So back when there were only 10 shadows, the palette was $29, and it also comes with a brush. What an amazing price. So if you find an Anastasia palette and you like at least half the shades, I highly recommend you purchase it, because while you can buy these shades individually, it is a way way better deal to buy the palettes. Out of all the Anastasia palettes, the Tamanna palette was the one I had to have because I loved the majority of the colors in this palette. I think you have a really nice variety. You have 4 matte neutral shades. You have a warm tone neutral and a cool tone neutral, and you also have a couple pops of color as well as a champagne shade. I think this is a very versatile palette. Highly recommend checking out Anastasia palettes and her single shadows. Next I have the Tarte Rainforest After Dark palette, which was supposed to be a limited edition, but I do believe they have made it permanent. I really love the disc packaging. It comes with 6 shadows, a blush, a bronzer, and a highlight. I love that you are getting your shadows and your cheek products all in one palette. I think it's super convenient because not only do you know that the colors will work together, it's also great for traveling. I do find that the Tarte shadows do have nice quality. Again, not my most favorite quality. I don't think it's super impressive, but it also isn't a letdown either. And I love being able to try the different cheek products as well. So this is definitely a palette I would recommend. The next palette I have is new to me. This is from Memebox. This is the I'm eyeshadow palette in the shade From Day to Night. I have not worn this one yet, but it is a lot of really great warm tone neutrals. You have some matte, satin, shimmery, and this really glittery color here. The last palette I have to share with you guys is the first palette I ever purchased. This is the Manly Pro palette that I had purchased off of eBay. You have 120 colorful and neutral shadows, very similar to the Coastal Scents and BH palettes. So I had purchased this because Lauren Luke, or Panacea81, she was the very first beauty YouTuber I ever watched, and she used this palette all the time. So when I first bought this palette, my freshman year in college, I wore it every single day. Now that I've purchased a lot more palettes, I realize this is not good quality. While these shadows are pigmented, they do not have any lasting power. They are so dusty, you can wipe them right off. So I definitely did have to apply a lot of layers, but back then I didn't really know what I was doing with eyeshadow. I wasn't so picky because I hadn't had any experience with other eyeshadows. Well, I had purchased a couple like Maybelline and Wet n Wild palettes, but nothing like actual palette or any high-end eyeshadows. So this is what it looks like. You got a lot going on in here. I've used these so much. The only reason I still have this palette is in case I need to grab for a certain color. Have I ever had that instance? Definitely not. I need to get rid of this. I'm never going to have that opportunity where I need to use this crazy bright color, because I do have some other crazy bright colors from different brands. I have some awesome ColourPop shadows that would work well for that. So while this has every eyeshadow color under the face of the sun, I don't think I need it. I think it is a great starter palette. It is a great price. It comes with a lot of shadows. So I thought that it could be fun to do a little wish list at the end of all of these videos, letting you know what products in that category that I'm wanting to try. So for palettes, I really want to get the Dose of Colors Hidden Treasure palette. That comes with 10 eyeshadows, all neutral. 5 are super metallic shades and 5 are mattes. I really want to try that. I think it restocks mid-April. Then I want to try the Balm Meet Matrimony. It is the same amazing quality as the Balm Meet Matte Nude, but they are just different colors. Whenever I can get that on sale for 50% off, I'm going to buy it. I'm also considering wanting to try the Too Faced Peanut Butter and Jelly palette and also the original Chocolate Bar palette. Please let me know your thoughts if you've tried out any of these palettes. I would love to know your favorite palettes in a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts about the ones that I've shown here today. I would love to know what you guys would like to see in this series next. I'm thinking about doing bronzers and contour powders. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you all so much for watching. Please rate, comment, and subscribe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye, guys.